Hello Year 7, this is Mr. Tilley from Perryfields High School. Today's session I'm going to start with a historical who am I. So I want you to try and guess from the clues I give you the topic of this presentation today. I contain 458 million people. I cover 14.2 million square miles. I am present in nearly every continent on the globe. The sun never sets on me. I taught people the game of cricket. Just spend a moment, have a think about those statements I've just read out. Can you guess what topic we're going to be moving on to in our studies? So each of these statements I've made relates to this topic that we're moving on to now. So I'll give you a moment. You can stop the presentation for a second and see if you can work out what it is we are going to move on to study. Right, having given yourself a bit of time, hopefully you may well have guessed that the topic we're moving on to is the Empire, particularly the British Empire. So here you have a map showing the British Empire at its height, and you can see that it does contain countries from across the globe and across the different continents, from North and South America, Africa, Asia and Australasia. And there was a famous phrase that was used at the time of the British Empire when it was at its height, that the sun never sets on the British Empire. And I'll leave you to ponder on that statement because we'll come back to that later on. So Year 7, having looked at the size of the British Empire, the fact that it spanned the whole of the globe, what do we think an empire actually is? What does it mean? So again, I'll give you a bit of time there to think about that statement. So what is an empire? Well, the answer basically is a group of states or countries under one authority. So one ruler has control over a range of different countries or territories. So two key words really for today's presentation: empire. And we could define this as being a group of nations or peoples ruled over by an emperor or empress or other powerful government. And within that, we also talk about colonies. And these are basically any countries or territories or people that are separate from but still ruled over by another country. What you can see before you now is a commemorative plate that was designed and made in 1887, and this was the Jubilee year of Queen Victoria, the 50th year celebration of her accession to power in 1837. And as you can see on this plate, the British Empire in particular was a main focus of this celebration. So I want you to study this plate really carefully, and on the next slide I'm going to ask you to do a number of things in relation to this plate. So you can pause it here and have a good look at the plate for a few moments, and then as you restart the film, it takes you on to the next slide, as we'll do so now. And what I'd like you to do is follows. I want you to imagine that this plate is the only piece of evidence we have about the British Empire. What can it tell us about the British Empire? Now, these might be things that you are sure about, so it might be facts that you can see that are stated within the plate, or they might be things that you can infer from the source. Now, what I mean by infer is looking beyond the obvious, working out something that is not actually stated in black and white on the slide itself or on the source itself, but things that you can surmise or work out from the information in front of you. So for example, why was the British Empire described as the empire on which the sun never sets? So like I said before, I'd like to stop this presentation now, slide it back to the actual plate, spend a few moments looking at that, and then I'd like you to, either in your mind, in your head, or perhaps written down on a piece of paper, I'd like you to list everything that you can learn about the British Empire from this piece of evidence. So I'm really asking you to explore and to analyse this piece of evidence in detail. And once you've had a go for yourself, I'll then run through some of the things that hopefully you've discovered about the British Empire from this source. So what can we learn from this plate? So having studied it and analysed it for a little while now, what can we learn from it? Well, Hopefully you've stated the obvious things, like in 1887 Britain's Queen was Victoria. She and her husband Prince Albert are in the centre of the plate. The fact that they're in the centre of the plate implies that they are the most important people in the British Empire. Britain had an empire, and countries like Australia, India, Canada and Cape Colony were part of this empire. The sun never set on the British Empire. Now, this was a phrase that was used to describe the British Empire because it basically implies the British Empire was so huge and covered so much of the globe that basically at any moment in time the sun would be shining on at least one part of the British Empire. So, for example, as we know, in Britain, when it's night time, it's pretty much daytime in Australia because of the time difference between these two parts of the world. And it gives you an idea of just how huge the British Empire was. Other facts we can gain from the plate are the total population of the empire was 305,347,924. In addition, the total area of the empire was 9,101,699 square miles. In 1885, imports were £390,018,569. So essentially, we were buying into the country that much produce from our empire. And this gives you a bit of an understanding of why an empire is important for a country. It gives you resources that you can't produce or grow in your own country. And by having an empire, you can import these raw materials or manufactured products into your country and therefore increase your wealth and prosperity. In 1885, Britain exported, that means sold to other parts of the empire and across the globe, 295,967,583 pounds worth of goods. So these figures show us that the empire was very important for Britain's trade and the health of her economy at this time. The other people of the empire on this plate look less sophisticated, civilized, and are all looking towards Britain. So this implies that the British think that they are making the world a more civilized place. Now, hopefully you've got most of those key points, or if you haven't, you can obviously add them now. But one piece of evidence gives us a very clear understanding of the British Empire. It gives us an understanding of what the British people, and particularly the government, felt about that empire at that time, the importance of the empire to our prosperity and our wealth, but also how people in Britain perhaps perceived people within the empire, the fact that people in Britain at that point in time thought of themselves as being superior, more sophisticated than those people that they had conquered as part of their empire. So, by way of a final activity for today's session, you can see in front of you a grid, and across the top it's got Australia, India, South Africa and the Gold Coast and the Caribbean. And down the left hand side are a series of questions that I'd like you to find the answers to for each one of those countries. Now, I have basically done that for Australia and India, but I'd like you to find out the answers to those 4 questions for South Africa and the Caribbean. So the questions on the left are: when did this country become and then cease to be a colony? Why was this country important for Britain? Identify one impact, positive or negative, about British rule on this country. And finally, identify one fact about the relationship between Britain and this country. Now, I've done Australia and India by way of an example for you to show you the kind of detail and information I would like you to try and find. And in order to help you do this, on the next few slides, I've incorporated some information about South Africa and the Caribbean, which you can use to help you complete this grid. Now, you don't need to write out all the information as I've done there. I just want to find the answers for South Africa and the Caribbean. At that point, I'm going to stop the presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. As you go through this term, you'll be exploring far more about the British Empire. And obviously, when you come to the end of this unit of work, you'll be able to come back to this presentation, and that plate that we shared at the start of this presentation will have far greater meaning for you with the knowledge that you'll gain about the British Empire. You'll be able to infer and deduct far more information from that plate once you've obviously studied a little bit more about the British Empire. But like I say, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Don't forget to go through the next few slides to find the information that you need in order to complete this chart. Take care. This is Mr. Tilley signing off.